You've probably heard this in most videos, but it still rings true today no matter how many times you try and get away from it. The quality of your presentation is solely determined by how much your audience loves it. And in this week's episode of MasterTalk, we're going to be talking about exactly how to be a bit more obsessive with your audience and some tips and tricks to practice that. Hi everyone, I hope you're having a great week. Brendan from MasterTalk here, your go-to channel to mastering your talk. And today we're going to go over 3 key tips and tricks that I use to be obsessive about my audience. So let's get into it. Number 1, practice as if your audience didn't exist. Hear me out. A lot of the times in case competitions when I was in university, most of those competitions were generally presented to judges who weren't actually a part of the company. So this is largely because sometimes case competitions just don't have the budget to bring the actual CEO of the company. In that regard, a lot of the judges happen to be faculty professors, people who have either competed in case competitions, or people who generally teach them. There's also company sponsors that come to the event sometimes, but those company sponsors aren't necessarily from the company itself. So because of this, a lot of the practices that we did as teams were generally involving and around a lot of individuals who had nothing to do with the company or the judges themselves. But we needed to pretend as if the CEO was still in the room, because that would give us the attitude and the mindset to present as if he existed in the first place. All to say that if you practice pretending that an audience exists when they actually don't, when you're actually presenting to the audience that does, you'll have a much easier time presenting. In the last week's video of Master Talk, I gave an example of a pitch where I presented at a case competition. In that example for Vitality Health, the company and the CEO of the company actually was never at the case competition. But the way I started and the way I interacted in that video, which you'll have in the description below, goes to show you that even when an audience doesn't exist, or even if they're not around to see your presentation, if you pretend as if they did exist, you'll have a much easier time practicing being obsessive about your audience. Number 2, practice directly to your audience by name. Generally, when I think about public speaking or when I give my keynotes for Master Talk, I generally like to compare public speaking to having a cup of coffee with a friend. So this means once you haven't seen someone in a long time, 3, 4, 5 years, and you meet them after so long, you're really, really connected to that person. You want to tell them all about your life, all of your past accomplishments, and what are the most important things. And you also are going to be super energetic to see them. That's why when you speak in public, you also want to bring that same level of connection. That's why whenever I present to a group, or when I present to an individual or key decision makers in a boardroom or a presentation, I want to focus on directing them by name. So instead of saying, "Hi, my name is Brendan, blah, blah, blah," I say, "Good afternoon, Mrs. Valives. My name is Brendan. I'm here to teach you exactly how to get to the next stage of your growth." By directing your audience by name and by talking to them directly, you'll be able to create a new type of connection and practice. Another great trick I like to use is I practice with people who aren't actually going to be a part of my audience, so friends and family and people that will help me, and they pretend to be the audience. So for example, if I'm practicing with Julia, but her name, let's say I'm practicing with Julia and she's actually Miss Valise, the person I'm actually going to be presenting to, I'm going to address her as Miss Valise. So you need to keep that in mind. The third thing, and probably the most important thing, is don't be afraid to do crazy things when you're presenting in front of an audience, just to practice. I'll give you an example of how far I take this with a lot of the students I teach. I remember a couple of years ago, we had to give an in-class presentation to our audience. And in that presentation, my entire introduction, so 30 seconds, was all in Japanese. So why did I do it in Japanese? I did it because the CEO of the company was based in Japan, and a lot of the executives only speak Japanese in that country. But none of them were in the room. But my coach, who also happened to speak Japanese coincidentally, congratulated me for being very obsessive about my audience, though he didn't phrase it that way. This all goes to show you that the biggest length that you take to get your audience excited about what you're doing, the more interesting your presentation becomes. Don't afraid to take those risks. There's even a future presentation I'm going to be giving in a couple of months where I'm actually going to buy roses and bring them to the presentation. Why? Simply because I already know the audience, and second, they're going to wonder the entire keynote why I brought roses in the first place. So when I distribute them at the end, I'm going to be able to tie those roses in with how important mastering your audience is. Because it's such an early presentation, people are going to be tired. So these roses are going to help get them excited and bring energy levels back up. As always, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Being obsessive with your audience is a very difficult thing to do, and this is why I don't recommend practicing these tips until you've focused on the foundations and the basics. But I'll leave you with this. The quality of your presentation is solely determined by how much your audience loves it. So if you learn to be obsessive with your audience, you'll be one step closer to mastering your talk. If there's one person that you know that needs a little bit of kick to get that audience excited about them and their ideas, be sure to send them this video as well. Have a great everyone. Take care. Have a great week, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.